community shares. If anyone has reports or questions about the talk or the practice or life or anything you want to share about what happened for you or any wisdom you have, please raise your hand, and this will be just a time for us to discuss amongst ourselves. Yes.
Hi, I'm Sense. It was good to hear you, and good sit. I really appreciated the notion of, rather than suffering, looking at vulnerability. That was a real shift in my awareness, because I certainly don't feel like I suffer. You know, of course, if I wanted to really dig down, I mean, it feels like suffering, but not what I really think of as suffering. Living in such abundance in my life. I can have internal suffering, you know, my own dramas and things like that. But vulnerability is, I feel vulnerable a lot. So it was a really nice takeaway.
Nice.
Thank you for that.
Yeah, for me, vulnerability feels often scary, but actually once I get past the hump, it's actually the source of all the juice and life and zest. But the resistance to vulnerability, the trying to get the fruit of living without being vulnerable, is what creates the suffering, is what creates the problems, is what creates the stress of wanting to be able to consume or have infinite resources in the world without taking the consequences of that kind of system, is what creates suffering. And so I sort of got this also from one of my past teachers in Boston. He never framed it as the Four Noble Truths, but he always talked about vulnerability is courage, and courage is vulnerability. But for me, I do a different meditation or do interpersonal practices, and it's interesting to me how hard it is for us to feel vulnerable, how hard it is for me to feel vulnerable with myself and also feel vulnerable with someone else. And yet that's often where the most change and connection and life and insight actually lies. So as you said, I think this is more relatable to the ways we resist vulnerability. And yet I think we've all had the experience that some of our most enriching, best experiences in life were actually very vulnerable moments. And the people we trust the most are the ones we can be the most vulnerable with. And in this time right now we live in these modern times, it's so hard to trust and be vulnerable with we don't have community, we don't have civic institutions or structures or organizations that we really trust, that we're willing to be vulnerable with. And instead there's this hyper individualism, each person out for themselves. If we average out everyone's selfishness, then somehow things will be good. And so instead we're learning as a community, how do we have trustworthy relationships? How do I become a trustworthy person? How do we learn how to be vulnerable with life, with myself, with each other, so that we can live in a more honest way with integrity? So thank you for sharing that, and I'm happy it struck a chord for you. Danny.
I think I've tried asking a question during meditation, but never felt like I got anywhere with it. But doing it just now was really different. I went with your default question of how to fully give myself to love. And it was I don't know, it was really interesting to have it feel so alive, and there was just, and then experimenting with emphasizing different words as I said it, or asking it with space in between, or like continually asking it, and like feeling all that came up in my body, and like also seeing like kind of weird trancey things. I'm kind of like half asleep. Yeah, it was just like very full of content, and it was really interesting to me. And I think the question felt really resonant, so yeah, I just wanted to share.
Cool.
And thanks for the suggestion.
Great.
Yeah.
Wow. Sounds like it's a very alive question for you, so that's great. Yeah, it's interesting because I mentioned earlier there's this like jury of peers that I think I, at least in my younger years, guided a lot of my life based on, you know, how would this look to this unknown crowd of people that I think are important. Maybe it's my family or friends or whoever. But I think this also happens in practice. Of I'm supposed to practice this way. I should ask this question. And it's good to get instruction and really do the technique that you're prescribed. Really throw yourself into whatever teaching you receive. But there is also this really playful, creative, inventive part of it that each of us have our own path that only we can walk, and only we know what the important questions are. I'm really happy that you decided to do a lot of experimenting in ways that I didn't even mention, of pacing and stressing different words, and find a way to make it yours and experience the richness of life giving us answers that doesn't necessarily fit the formula that I might have had beforehand of, if I do this technique, then this is going to happen, it's supposed to happen, and I'm supposed to do it this way. And all this mental gymnastics of making sure I'm doing things the appropriate way or something. I also thought you were going to say, I've done this question a lot of times and it never works, and it didn't work this time. So I'm really happy something happened this time, because I've definitely done inquiry practices where I feel like this is a waste of time. So I'm glad something happened. You know. Cool.
Yeah, I think I would have maybe, at first, I felt maybe, this never does anything for me, you know? So I'm glad I tried anyways.
Cool. Thanks. Any other? Yeah.
So it was interesting, when I was sitting, I had a lot of physical pain. Just like a lot of really actually incredible pain in my hips and my knees. And I was trying to like bring my mind into it, and just sit with it, and let it be what it is. But the letting it go part, I'm not sure where that comes in. Just a really vivid experience of where in my body I'm feeling tension and stress and a lot of physical pain. But the dissipating part hasn't quite come yet. I'm wondering when it does come.
So you're noticing there was a lot of leg and pelvis, hip pain, and then
as I'm sitting, I think I'm just my body is exhausted and right now, and finding a position and determined to keep my form.
And then you didn't notice any significant changes by like the beginning versus the end?
By the end, I had like kind of given into it and shifted my legs, which dissipated the pain.
Right. Well, this brings up a good point that I don't think I mentioned in the guidance, which is what's the example? Well, so I could give instruction like feel your body completely right now. And honestly, that might not feel available to a lot of us in that moment, and that's fine. The point is, what can I do right now? We set a goal, we set an intention. Maybe I'm going to give my life completely to great love. And maybe that's not available right now, but that doesn't mean we can't do anything right now. So what's available for me to do right now, and then pushing that edge to reach that goal, reach that aspiration, reach that intention. And that might even mean sometimes taking a step back and relaxing. As counterintuitive as that might seem, and some teachers might disagree with me, but I think it's true. So finding what works for me right now and starting there. And then like Danny shared, being inventive, creative, playful with how do I work with this? Shinzen Young is a teacher that's sort of like the godfather of the monastic academy. And he always says you can turn towards the pain or you can turn away from the pain. One strategy might be, I'm not going to feel the pain. I'm going to focus somewhere else that's pleasant or neutral and have a complete experience of that. And that's fine. We're not masochists. It's not necessarily like you have to feel the worst thing every moment of your life or something. But you can also turn towards the pain. And pain is a great focus object in that there's no bullshitting around pain. If it feels bad, we're going to feel it. And so then we really get to work with how do I relate and work with this. We don't have to. We can turn away from it, focus somewhere else. Nothing inherently more valuable to focus on the pain rather than focus somewhere else. But we can also choose to focus on the pain and learn how am I holding this pain. It actually goes really well with the talk I gave. So normally we have an experience of tension or pain or hatred or greed or something. And that seems like a terrible experience. The question is, what do we do? How are we relating to that experience? Which oftentimes is based on how we believe what is true or what is important. If we really believe there's a way I could not feel this pain and I'm fighting, debating in my head, should I keep being with this pain or should I do something else? And we're subtly keep going back and forth. We're probably going to suffer a lot. But I think all of us have been in situations where we didn't have a choice. We just had to bear some emotional or physical, mental stress. And we knew there was no other option and it was fine. But meditation is kind of a struggle because no one, unless you're in a Japanese Zen monastery, no one's going to hit you if you move or something. So there's this internal war. Maybe I could move, maybe I shouldn't move. So that's one view, that's one belief. Is it more important to be with this pain, or maybe I'm actually hurting myself and I should move? Another view might be, I am my body. This body is really important, this is who I am, so if it gets hurt, it's a real problem. Furthermore, if I really feel this pain, it's probably going to actually really hurt me even more. This is a belief we carry. Might be a justified, real belief. Maybe it's true. But maybe it's not. And this is actually true of a lot of our patterns. Whenever we have any stuck patterns, it could be relationally or related to work or related to practice, where we really believe the pattern, but it might not be true. Like, we do the circling practice, interpersonal meditation practice, where it feels like if people pay attention to me and I don't have something really entertaining and engaging to say, then I'm wasting everyone's time. It's a very strongly held belief most of us grow up with. And then we can do practices and realize, oh, that's not actually true. Not always true, at least. And so similarly, we might feel a tension in our bodies and go, if I fully felt this, I think I'd go crazy. or something bad will happen. Oftentimes, the emotional brain doesn't have a, if I do this, then just bad. If you ask what bad, it just says it's bad. Don't ask me what, just don't do it. And so sometimes we can call the bluff if that feels available and see, well, am I really my body? Will this really lead to a bad thing? And that happens a lot of times in our lives. If I really am honest with my parent or my spouse or my partner or my coworker or my boss or my partner, will it really be bad? Or does it just feel like it'll be really bad in my body? If I give up my job and quit my job to join a monastery, will that really be terrible? Or does it just feel terrible? These are feelings are valid. We should feel our feelings, but we should honor our feelings. We should fully acknowledge our emotional experience as well as our thoughts, but we don't necessarily believe them on face value. You know? We don't have to believe the story that our emotions or our thoughts are saying. They may or may not be true, especially if we gather evidence over time or other wise people in the past that we trust have said other things, then we should maybe test, is this true? So one way we can do is take on the way of looking, take on the way of relating. I am not my body. This body sensation is not me, is not mine, is not myself. It's a very basic Buddhist doctrine. I am not my feelings. I am not my body. I'm not my perceptions. I'm not even my consciousness. What happens if I take on that way of relating and actually feel my body fully? Maybe some of you are familiar with, like, there's this very famous practice that was popular a few years ago, Wim Hof, Iceman sort of thing about taking cold showers or going to like icy lakes and learning, wow, when you go into a cold shower, an icy lake, everything in your body goes, this is a terrible idea, you're going to die right now. Get out of this water as soon as possible. And it's kind of true. If you don't know what you're doing, it's probably not good for you. But there is a practice and technique of how you can be in the cold water and actually get physical benefits if you know how to practice correctly. And actually the main thing is not freaking out and feeling the cold fully. Completely letting the cold go in and completely going to the middle of the cold, going into the middle. Where is the coldness? I will pierce right into it. Just something happens, I run towards it and try to feel it fully. And similarly, this can happen with body pain or tension or even heat. How do I run towards my experience full speed rather than subtly resist and judge? Is this a good experience? Should I let this in? How much should I let it in? All the spiritual traditions are ultimately about surrendering to life, trusting life. Having said that, I remember one of the first Zen retreats I ever sat, and in Zen you're not supposed to move at all, and they'll correct you if you move. Fortunately, Maple is not a Zen place, so people do move, but unfortunately it's not a Zen place, I don't know. Depends on how you look at it. But so I was still relatively new to meditation. I hadn't sat that much, and so I told myself I'm not going to move. And then all this pain was in my leg, and it felt like, you know, if anyone's been in a retreat, your mind starts going, it'd be better if I just chopped off my leg right now. Just chop this off. I literally feel like I'm going to go crazy if I don't do something about this. I think my leg is dying right now. And then somehow it changed into flow and felt ecstatic and blissful and really good. I just felt like energy in my whole body. And then I did interview with the Zen master, and I told them this great experience and how I'm so good at this and everything. And he said, you could have just stood up. Could have just stood up at any time. And I went, oh, okay. So on one hand, it's good. You should, if it's available, go directly into the experience. Go to the heart of the discomfort or coldness or pain or tension or doubt, uncertainty, don't know mind. Go fully into whatever experience we're in and embrace that fully. Say yes to that completely with unconditional acceptance. And sometimes that might not be available, and pretending to try to do what we think we're supposed to do even when it's not available might actually just create more resistance and pain, and might not be a skillful, beneficial thing. And so much of practice is learning both how do I throw myself in and surrender completely, and also learn what is skillful and what is not skillful. What do I actually have available to do right now, and what is not available yet to do right now. For most of us, we have self-limiting beliefs where we are capable of doing far more than we think we can. But that doesn't mean we should, stop eating and stop drinking water and, stop sleeping and just sit for, forever. Unless you're at that point where that's available. In which case you should do that. But realistically, most of us probably aren't at that point on a given moment. So, not a real answer besides, on one hand, fully embrace the pain. You can hold views of, I am not this body. This body sensation is temporary. If God came down and gave us a bargain and said, if you feel this pain completely, it's going to go away and probably become rapture and bliss in the next moment. Are you willing to feel this completely? For most of us, we go, no. Because I don't believe you. You're not real. And that's not true. This pain is permanent. This pain is not going to go away. This pain, if I feel it fully, is just going to last even longer. And that's true of most of our patterning. Not just the meditation, but most of our lives we have patterning where we don't believe it's impermanent. We do identify and get attached to it, and we think it is ourselves. So in ways you can break it on the view level. Hold the view, this is impermanent, this is not me, this is not mine, this is not myself. I should not identify with this. Go into it fully, feel it fully. And on the other hand, maybe just stand up. Maybe that's outside your purview, and if I'm just doing this because I think that's what Peter said to do one time, then maybe you shouldn't only do it because someone said that one time. More than anything, I'll say experiment and try new things out. So we're not just doing the same thing over and over again. Because most of us, when we experience something bad, we double down on the same strategy. And then we double down again and double down again. Sometimes that works. A lot of times that doesn't. So trying different things, really working with it, would be the main thing. Maybe time for like one or two last questions, comments, reports, shares. Yeah.
So when we were doing the inquiry, I found one it took a bit to find something that felt right for me.
Mm-hmm.
And once I sort of landed on that and repeated it a few times, there sort of became a statement rather than a question. Whereas waiting for something else to show up, rather than becoming inquisitive. And it isn't until you asked, how are you asking that question, that I sort of became aware of the desperation that I was asking the question with, and the sort of belief that was inherent within it, of inability, if that makes sense.
Right. So it sounds like initially you took some time, found a question that really matched you, and then as you were asking it, quickly became more of a statement. And inside that statement, you noticed, once you looked at how you're asking it, that there were implicit assumptions or beliefs lodged into that.
And it was a lot about what you were commenting on, the other about like how can I more completely feel my experience, or what is experience, and how can I more fully show up, something along those lines. And I don't know, I kind of started relaxing to it more, and didn't really come to anything, but it was interesting. Feel that way.
So once you're aware of those assumptions, something in you relaxed and you're able to be with your experience more. Oh, great. Well, that's great. That's it's good teaching. That, oftentimes being aware of how we're holding things changes our experience of the thing we're holding. And sometimes we think we need to get rid of this thing, when it might just be I need to actually just be with how I'm holding it. And it automatically changes. Even if the thing is still there, just my experience of being with it changes. So that's a wonderful way to also sort of approach, say, physical pain or emotional pain or anything. Rather than just wanting to go away, maybe I can notice, how am I holding this? How am I relating to this? What am I believing about this? And just that curiosity alone can completely change the experience of what's happening.